Hi, this is Brent Raymond, back with our Welcome to CITI line of videos. This is a third video in the segment after the Managers video, Edit Windows video, and this one is on users, privileges, and work groups. Again, I'm Brent Raymond. I work in the Information Services Department at the Art Institute of Chicago. I can be reached at bramo@arctic.edu or at the 4D Method user group website, 4dmethod@gmail.com, or on the website 4dmethod.wordpress.com. So we're back with talking about users and privileges. So I've already got a user account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. So I'm in already. I'm going to bring up the user and staff manager. You may or may not have access to this. Access to this is controlled, as you might imagine, in the user and staff manager for which privileges each of the privilege groups have. So in this screen you'll see privilege groups on the left with an area menu that has a standard add, open, delete, along with a duplicate function. You'll see a list of all of the users and staff in the museum. If you expand this a little bit, you'll not only see their department name information, their logon, their active, whether or not they're an active user or or active staff, what privilege group that they've been assigned to. We'll take a look at the privilege groups here in a second in detail, when they last logged on to the system, and their email. So let's take a look, just for the purpose of the video, at the All Privileges group. In this window, you'll see a list of all the privileges in CITI, and this is a collapsible list. You can actually type into the quick search area and search on a particular privilege, such as batch change. Oops. Right, so for each of the main parts of the program, you can see if a user, or in this case a privilege group, has access to these functions. You can either set or to activate or deactivate the privileges just by clicking on the check marks. To deactivate, it turns to a red icon there. To reactivate, it has the green check. If you do something and you want to revert the record, of course, it's right here. To go to the next privilege group, you can use the arrow buttons. You see here the conservation has very much different privileges than the all privileges group, most of which are in administration. However, there are lots and lots and lots of privileges so that we can control user access in CITI down to a very fine grain. As you see here, the privileges are grouped into themes, being administration, objects. These are all the entities in CITI. Exhibitions, transactions, shipments, tasks, resources, work groups, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, lists, the ability to edit control lists that are used for fields, and an assortment of auxiliary privileges, such as creating an image order or opening user windows, user message windows. all except for the administration and some of these, the work groups lists and auxiliary. For the main entities, they are very similar. They have similar sets of privileges that can be set. Standard sub-themes would be record access, the ability to, for instance, view deleted records or the action of undeleting a record, saving global briefcases, departmental briefcases, and so on, briefcase privileges. The next theme is opening the manager and all of the general manager functions, including using the views and work group views and saving the various kinds. The ability to open different views inside of the edit window is controlled right here, and the ability to add a new object or agent is controlled there. And then all the way down to every single field that's available in CITI, we can set privileges on each of the fields. You'll see here there's 3 columns. You can either turn it on for all of the privileges, which would include your own department, and for any work groups that you're in, or just one or the other. And this goes on and on and on. One thing to note, these do function in a somewhat hierarchical manner. You're not allowed to modify until you've been given the view privilege. So you need to activate the view privilege and then activate the modify. I believe that there's messages that will notify you of that. In the second view here in the privilege group window, you'll see a list of all of the users that belong to, that have this privilege group assigned to them. Coming back to the user and staff manager window, we see the list of users here as well. Some basic functionality here on the right side, the ability to add, open a user, or delete a user. There's also the send an all user email. This will populate the clipboard with the list of all active users' emails to make it easier to send out a broadcast message to all CITI users. Then let's go ahead and click into a record. How about we look at my record? In this first tab here, you see that my basic data, you can reset the password for users in these windows, see what department, set what department that they're assigned to, see when they've last logged on, and so on, and also see a list of work groups that they are that the user belongs to. And we'll see, take a look at the Workgroup Manager in just a moment to see how those are controlled and what the use of the work groups are. You'll see that I'm assigned to the privilege group of all privileges, and this is now in just a view-only mode of looking at the list of privileges. It is possible to change your setting to custom and to not be in one of the privileges groups, but generally we keep everybody in privileges groups because it's easier to manage. In the Sessions tab, we're able to see when users have logged on, when they've logged off, the duration that they've used CITI, what machine, IP address, operating system, screen size, and that's about it. But some information about each time that they log into CITI. The ones that are highlighted in red indicate that the user was disconnected. This could have happened because, for instance, if you are on a laptop and you close the laptop without exiting CITI, then it won't record a time that you actually log off. It could also happen if a machine goes to sleep while CITI is running, and that will also disconnect CITI. In future versions, we'll be able to, say, hibernate a CITI session when those kind of things happen, but currently that will show up as a disconnect, and we've made note of these disconnects just to analyze any network issues that we may or may not have now or in the future. So that about wraps it up for the users window. But let's take a look quickly at the Workgroup Manager, which is available under the File menu. You can hit Command 5 on a Mac, or go to it from the menu. So this is the Workgroup Manager. This is just a list of all workgroups that are in CITI. You can create a new workgroup by selecting Add, give it a name, and set an expiration date if you don't want this workgroup to live on forever. For instance, this is only applicable to a particular exhibition or project that you're working on, or you can set it to never expire. If a workgroup is going to expire, all of the users in the workgroup will receive an email that notifies them that this workgroup will be expiring soon, and perhaps you want to reset the expiry date if you don't want it to expire. In the second column here, you'll see all of the users who have been assigned to this workgroup. And in the third column, you'll see all users. Only the users who, and you can double click on the users to bring up their particular records, but only the users that have this check mark in the Can Edit tab can actually make any changes to the workgroup properties or add or remove users from the workgroup. So let's see if we don't have a CITI developers workgroup, which I believe we do. And I'll just go ahead and add Gene Adams to the CITI developers workgroup. And there we have him added to the workgroup, and it's automatically saved. And you can now select Gene to be able to edit this workgroup by clicking on there, double clicking it actually, or setting them back to not being able to have access to it. Right, so, and in here you can open the user, add to the group, and so on, deleting the user from a work group or opening the user, and so on. So what do you use workgroups for? Let's take a look in the Object Manager. Workgroups are, one interesting use of them are for sharing briefcases or sharing views. You can make a new briefcase, for instance, and set it to be shared with your department or with a specific work group. Those will be denoted by these two-person icon here. And you'll also be able to go ahead and take a look at the work group. Okay, it doesn't actually show it in the briefcase list, but by the display, you're able to see that it's associated with this particular work group. And were we to save a new briefcase, this is where you would select the work group that would be shared with. When people in this work group open a new manager, the briefcase will automatically show up in their list. Work groups can also be used to limit access to a particular artwork, for instance. So if we go in here and we look for work group and find a field, drop down there, as you can see in the text, members of these groups may have additional privileges for this object. You would add a work group by selecting it from the work groups that you have access to, such as CITI developers. And then this object in turn will be restricted to members of that work group. The same kind of security also happens in the image manager. So if we bring up some of the recent items, and we go to the Security tab, in this tab you can restrict to either a department itself, or you can restrict it to a selection of work groups. This brings up the Workgroup Manager, and you can drag the work group into the work group list. Several work groups can be listed in this area to restrict access to this record for only people who are in those selected work groups. So I think that wraps it up for this particular video. Hit escape to close these windows. Again, I'm Brent Raymond. I work on CITI for the Art Institute, and I can be reached at this email address, any of these email addresses. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or for any clarifications. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for the next video on batch change and batch create.